At the outset, it would be meaningful to acknowledge the inherent ambition contained in the framing of the topic itself. That is, with the right approach and by undertaking appropriate steps, India may become a seat of the future to conduct arbitrations. I leave it to my esteemed panelists to define and give the meaning of the seat of the arbitration and venue and the various other nuances of it. But I would straightaway go to the fact that this topic calls for a lot of introspection as to how India can become a preferred seat to conduct arbitrations in future. With this goal in mind, there is a need to evaluate the idea of the Indian arbitration ecosystem. For India to become a seat of the future, any myopic focus on a single stakeholder on issue would be insufficient in my view. What is often touted as one of the most significant barriers in enabling India's rise as an arbitration hub is excessive judicial intervention on the part of the Indian courts. Despite a catenary of judicial dicta that recommend a hands-off approach to arbitration in India, thereby envisioning the role of courts as more facilitative than interventionist, there is an unfortunate trend where challenges to arbitral awards have become quite commonplace. I'm informed that a recent study took place with regard to the judgments of the Delhi and Bombay High Courts as illustrations, where over 40% of the arbitral awards under challenge has subsequently been set aside. Further, the existence of a tiered system of review under Section 34, Section 37 of our Act leads to the award taking several years to attain finality and frustrating the very purpose of arbitration, enabling the speedy resolution of disputes, a mirage. However, I would be remiss to also not acknowledge the need for courts in India to possess some form of limited and principled oversight over the arbitral process. This exercise has been undertaken by Parliament itself in the amendment made to the Act in 2015, 2019, and 2021. I would not like to go into the details of various case law on this point, because this is an enlightened audience dealing with arbitration, except refer to Bharat Aluminium Company, Sayong Engineering, Vidya Drolia, Cox and Kings Limited, NN Global, and Gayatri Balaswamy recently, where the spirit of general non-interventionism is apparent. This is critical because the courts must remain vigilant to their largely supervisory capacity, as well as the fact that arbitration functions as a parallel and not necessarily subservient mode of dispute resolution and should be respected accordingly. I think Justice Black was expressing a while ago that arbitration is not an alternative to adjudication, but something which is parallel to court-related adjudication. But why is it that the courts are intervening? I would like to spell out some of those reasons. One of the reasons, according to me, goes directly into the integrity of arbitrators and as to how we can cure that. This is a critical element in ensuring India's status as seat of choice for parties which seek to arbitrate, and hence a bolstered reputation of the pool of arbitrators in the country is required. Let me be frank about this aspect. It is indubitable that there is no dearth of talent, skill, and experience possessed by the arbitrators in this country that rival any of the best in the world. However, aside from being sufficiently professionally competent, there is a dire need for arbitrators to act with an unequivocal commitment to fairness, ethics, and independence. An unimpeachable record forms the linchpin in ensuring the faith of the parties in the arbitral proceedings, and concomitantly that they are more likely to accept the arbitral award thus rendered. When arbitral awards are questioned before the courts, one of the aspects which are raised is with regard to the fairness of the entire process, apart from the substance of the awards being not in accordance with law or public policy. That is where I would say that an arbitrator must seek to always be prompt in his or her disclosure of potential conflicts of interest right at the very beginning of the process. Always ensure that principles of natural justice are complied with. Must not favor any one party or their position prematurely. Must maintain the highest standards of professionalism in all of their dealings. Must author awards in accordance with the established jurisprudence in a manner that is tailored and unique to the circumstances and facts of the case at hand and is sufficiently well reasoned. Must be accountable for their actions and must strive to always protect the confidentiality of the arbitral proceedings. I would say that the quality of the arbitral award would ultimately have a bearing on the intervention being made by the courts. If the awards are of a high quality, automatically the intervention of the courts would be very, very less. Therefore, it is the duty of the arbitrators to ensure that their awards are of the highest quality, and the process of writing the award is also of the highest quality. Let me tell you, when we are judges, when we are advocates, when we are practicing law in a court of law, we have a rigor and a discipline. But is that missing in an arbitration process? If so, then who should do the introspection? Not just the advocates who are appearing before the arbitrators, but it is my humble opinion that the arbitrators themselves must introspect as to how they can attract more arbitration to this country. Every arbitrator must bear in mind that their conduct has a direct bearing on the perception of India's potential as an arbitration hub. Considering that a large proportion of arbitrations in India are ad hoc in nature, the possibility of development of a formal code of conduct that would serve as a guide to such arbitrators in India must be explored. I would appeal to this conference that let there be a resolution passed that a formal code of conduct would be made, if not already there, or if it is there in a very fluid state, for the arbitrators to follow in the future. A related concern is that of diversity in the pool of arbitrators. Arbitration cannot be the domain of retired judges as well or well-established names alone in the legal field. This is not merely in the interest of equality of opportunity, but also serves the purpose of ensuring that specialists in their field, which may even include non-lawyers entirely, are able to provide their invaluable insights, especially into sector-specific arbitration, and that may be technically complex. I think Mr. Quest will be speaking about this. A successful arbitration hub needs a deep pool of skilled professionals, and this involves continuous investment into the growth, upskilling, and professional development of the next generation. In this regard, I think that the establishment of a dedicated arbitration bar of India is an incredibly favorable step. It is a recognition of the need for career arbitrators and not merely those who practice arbitration after the day in court has concluded or as a weekend affair. While there have been many strides in this respect, it is unfortunately the case that arbitration continues to be a male-dominated field. It is critical that both more women are appointed as arbitrators, and any explicit or implicit biases or roadblocks that prevent the possibility of their appointment must be swiftly and thoroughly addressed. And also the younger women receive the requisite access to opportunities that will enable them to be appointed as arbitrators in the future. By prompting diversity in the practice of arbitration, we can create a more inclusive, effective, and legitimate dispute resolution process. Justice Karya would be speaking about timelines and costs, but I would just like to hint by saying that timelines and costs are hindrances that serve as roadblocks to India's hope to becoming a global hub for arbitration. There must be a recognition of the fact that delays in arbitral proceedings and non-compliance with the timelines have a bearing on India's perception as a desired seat to conduct arbitral proceedings. This issue of costs is another major advantage in one sense and a disadvantage in another. It is an advantage because India serves as a desirable seat for the conduct of proceedings which can be conducted in a cost-efficient manner as compared to overseas arbitration. But the speedy conclusion of the arbitral proceedings is critical in ensuring this key selling point of lowered costs. Another aspect is ensuring sufficiently deterrent costs are imposed in case of wholly frivolous and unmeritorious challenges to arbitral proceedings. Let me introduce another idea to this enlightened audience, which is institutional versus ad hoc arbitration and the merits and demerits thereof. It is an undeniable fact that today the majority of the arbitrations in India are conducted in an ad hoc fashion, and the entire process is dependent on party cooperation and consent. But what happens when there is lack of cooperation and consent between the parties? A possible solution to this is to actively promote institutional arbitration. With institutional arbitration comes some guarantees of professional management, common rules applicable to all, usually a pre-existing set of arbitrators that have been vetted and have a track record, certainty of the process, procedural fairness, and shorter timelines. India's existing arbitral institutions such as the ICA, MCIA, IIAC, DIAC, that is Delhi International Arbitration Center, must be bolstered and popularized so that more parties are aware of the option to opt for an institutionally administered arbitration. A large number of arbitral institutions with empaneled arbitrators must be established, not just in the usual branches of law, but even in niche areas such as technology law. Moreover, these institutions must have state-of-the-art infrastructure and logistical and technological facilities. Then only they would inspire confidence and the arbitrations would be fair, transparent, ethical, accountable, and efficient. One other idea that I would like to place on the table is with regard to a meaningful step in enhancing Indian arbitration ecosystem is to promote mediation as a parallel mode of dispute resolution, especially through the inclusion of multi-tiered dispute resolution clauses. Incorporating mediation either as a mandatory step before deciding to arbitrate or as an option available to amenable parties after the arbitration process has commenced would allow for even quicker resolution of disputes and has been statutorily recognized as permissible even under Section 30 of the Act, especially in cases where expediency or preservation of the existing relationship between the parties is of importance. Arbitral institutions must provide the option of parties to be able to opt for mediation. Therefore, qualified mediators also forming part of the institutional apparatus would likely further truncation of the process and efficient resolution of the dispute. I wish to take this opportunity to re-emphasize the need for various stakeholders to collectively participate in the shared vision of making India a global hub for arbitration. The vital requirements of a well-functioning arbitration ecosystem, namely finality, structure, credibility, legitimacy, efficiency, professionalism, and a culture of resolution are interlinked and are dependent on institutional integrity, judicial restraint, technology, and infrastructural development in turn. Arbitration in India must become faster, fairer, cheaper, and more credible so as to inspire confidence in parties, both domestic and international, to choose India as a seat. While there are miles to go in this regard, I am an optimist and confident that India would be a seat of the future in future, and this is within the reach of our combined efforts, commitment, and innovative thinking. With this, I close my address. I thank each one of you for your kind patience and hearing. Namaskar.